So you have the head, you have the chest, you have the rump, and you can get to the bones of the leg and everything, but you don't draw individual bones. You just draw a couple lines. And
this first step is basically just to get something down on the paper so that you're a little bit less intimidated by the blank canvas, you know what I mean?
And it's going to be messy, it's going to be ugly, but that's okay. It's underneath everything. You're drawing a little lighter, you're not worrying about it.
It's also a great way to test out your proportions before you even start getting into like the thickest stuff. So,
and then you can see you're working from general towards specific. So I started with the circles and the lines, and now I'm getting a little bit rounder with the hair of the tail and the hair up here, but it still doesn't have exactly what's going to be the end there. And so, since this is digital, we can cheat a little bit and make it lighter underneath, and then try to get a little...
I'd comment, but I can't even see what you're drawing.
Oh.
Oh, look at that. He's way past me already.
Let's see. I seem to be on the wrong way. I'm on the wrong tool. It's a terrible tool.
And don't be afraid about the undersketch being messy. This is the part, this is, as View said, just the part to get your idea on the page. And as you work through a process, you'll start to refine it further and further. We'll get wings added to it soon.
I do like drawing wings. They're something I draw a lot of.
Yeah, it's definitely a viewer stupid question. All right, so what step are we on? Are you still under sketching?
Yeah, we can get to whatever. Start talking about whatever you like.
All right, well, one other thing that I would like to mention about undersketching before we move on is that, you know, like we were saying, it's kind of the guideline for what you're going to do in the future. And as such, while it's okay to be messy because you're going to fix things, it's also good to start thinking a little bit more volumetrically as you do it. One of the big things that kind of makes beginner art from intermediate, you know, one of the big things that differentiates the two is volume. And the guidelines that View is using right now is a great way to start dictating volume before you even get into the thick of your sketch. So he already has an idea of where he's going to put facial stuff and all that because he's working on it in the undersketch, and it's a great place to start, I guess, getting more of those ideas down, even in the details. So.
Yeah, and another word for volume people often use is roundness. Is trying to get the difference between viewing a can from its side, and you can't really tell what it is, and viewing a can from a little bit above it.
I know a thing or two about roundness.
And you get something a little easier to see, and it feels more three-dimensional.
I think just generally drawing and making something look 3D, even though it's on a 2D medium, I think that's what is absolutely the most challenging part of art. It's definitely the thing that takes practice, because spatial thinking is not something that just comes like super easily. You know, it's like one of those little brain muscles you got to stretch every once in a while. So usually when artists are getting frustrated and stuff, it's about volume. But we can talk more about that later. But right now, what step are you on?
I'm still doing some undersketch stuff.
Okay.
I've demonstrated volumes a little bit.
And which horse are you drawing, by the way?
I think I'm going with Derpy.
All right. Why not Sweetie Belle, dude?
Because I didn't draw Sweetie Belle.
Fine, I'll draw Sweetie Belle.
Is that unusual? Anyway. And see, I did a basic oval for the eyes, and in MLP, the show style often does very, very, very large ovals, something like crazy high like that. I'm doing something a little smaller because I like a little smaller, but that's just me. And you see, I put the hairline up here, but it doesn't quite work up there, so we're going to move it down here. And since it's simple, we can just do that, and we're not going to worry about it. We can do legs. We're following along where our bones are.
All right, well, how about we take the opportunity to talk a little bit about anatomy and proportion then. This is probably one of the first things that you're going to learn if you start picking up like how to draw ponies or whatever, you know. If you start taking this seriously, it's going to be anatomy and proportion and stuff, and that's usually what the first hurdle is for most people. So when it comes to that, you know, I don't really have any great rules of thumb. Maybe you guys do.
Well, here we have a very, very large head. This head is a bit large, and it's the wrong size, and that's sad. But since it's simplified, we can just erase down a little bit and come in. So usually the head in show style is about the same size as the rump. It's a little bigger, and the chest is a bit smaller, and the neck is not that tall.
But then it changes depending on, like whether or not you're drawing a stallion or one of the weirder characters like snips or snails. They are strange.
Or if you have an exaggerated pose, if the pony is running or something.
And because this may be a question that some may be thinking, what's the main difference between, proportion-wise, doing a full-grown character and a child character, any like filly or colts?
I am qualified for that one. Basically, it's just like you just make the body way smaller and the legs way stubbier, for fillies at least, and colts too. They have the stubbiest legs. Like even as I draw them, I think they're too stubby, and then I compare it to show style, and they're perfect. But it's really just a matter of just enlarging the head when it comes to drawing younger characters and stuff. You just make it way bigger, make the eyes way bigger, and then you make the eyes way rounder too.
Yes.
Yeah.
The eyes are quite a bit rounder in younger ponies, and this makes them look cuter and more adorable.
Yep.
So from here, you would clean up a little more. You turn the layer down, but on traditional, you refine with an eraser and you clean up your lines and you do all that stuff. But that takes time, and time is not something we necessarily have too much of here. So since this is supposed to be dirty, we draw a wing. And the wings in show style are kind of like a kite, where you have a point on one end and it's rounded on the other. And it starts generally at the shoulder. Sometimes in show they'll make it start towards the middle of the belly, but that looks kind of weird if you're just drawing. And then we have 3 feathers to make up little feathers there. Anything else we should cover? Front side, wings?
I don't know. I mean, this is a pretty basic walkthrough. There's really not much to talk about. But I think it's important to go over like kind of the steps in your thought process as you were going along there. So like a lot of what us and other artists do is experience based. We kind of know what we're doing. However, one of the things that Vera is not doing that you guys absolutely should do is check out some references. Steve, he was just kind of drawing from his head. He was kind of just memorizing things. He knows what the proportions are. But odds are you guys, if you're a beginner, might not. So it's absolutely, you need to do it. You need to look up a reference of a horse.
and so we have a reference of a nice lyra here.
Yeah.
And I use this lyra a lot because it's a nice lyra. And it gives us a good sense of the proportions. We see how large the head is in comparison to everything else. We see how the back slopes down a little bit before it goes up into the neck. And so then we can take that into our own drawing and say, okay, we're going to have a nice big head. We're going to have a rump kind of there, and the chest is going to come down, and we're going to have that down. And we look back at our reference, and look back at what we did, and say, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Let's correct things a little bit, because you always want to correct when you look at your reference. Come back and forth, back and forth. And when you're drawing from a reference, it's really just about half the time looking at the reference and half the time looking at your drawing. Just back and forth,
and this is something that's crucial to art in general. It's not just a pony thing, because there's some famous like phrase from some Disney artist or something where he asked people to like draw shoes, and people would always just draw the symbol of a shoe. It never actually looks like a shoe because nobody really knows all the little details that go into it until you look at it. You have to see it to believe it, I guess.
There's also one thing that a lot of more experienced artists will do sometimes, especially if they're having like a bit of artist block, is just going out and sketching something they see in real life. There's a great video online of four Disney animators who to work together and build up their skills and also build up as their sort of team morale, since this was back in a time of more hand-drawn animation, so they all had to maintain the same style, what they did was they all went out and they drew the same tree, but there was differences both between the angle of which they were drawing the tree from and also their own styles, but it was just them going out and drawing a tree because it gave them a chance just to look at a tree and sort of interpret it onto the page how they felt it should show up.
One of the important things when drawing a reference is to measure and compare. And what you do is you pick a point, so we can pick the top of the tail here, and you pick another point, and we'll do kind of where the back bumps up the highest. And then you measure the angle between those, and you can hold your pencil up or your tablet pen or whatever, and look at the angle, and then you come back to your drawing and say, okay, is that the same angle? No, well, we'll draw the angle in there, and then we'll fix our pieces to match the angle so that we can more accurately interpret the reference. Back and forth, back and forth.
All right, so what have we gone over? We've gone over undersketching a little bit. We went over references. We went over a little bit of anatomy proportion. I feel like we could probably talk about that a little bit more. And then I really want to talk about volume because, like I said, I think that's one of the most important things that people really, really struggle with. And I think if there's anything that people can walk away from this, it's that volume is hard and it's also very, very important. But first, like I said, I feel like there's more we could be saying about proportion and anatomy.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know really what to say.
So let's get into.
I have something to say actually.
Okay.
So when it comes to this proportion and anatomy stuff, a lot of people try to run before they can walk a little bit. There's a lot of people that want to try doing their own thing, their own style, like right out the gate. So they'll way oversize the hooves or the legs or something. You know, they'll make the chest really big or the muzzle really square, such and such, and it just doesn't really work because they don't really know what it means to balance something out proportionally. When you make a change to one thing, you kind of have to balance it with the rest of the proportions. It all has to work together, and a lot of people don't see that one until they start figuring it out for themselves. But I would encourage everybody here that if you're trying to get better at drawing ponies, then stick to show style for a while. Just because it's going to teach you the fundamentals of what you're drawing. And then once you know those fundamentals really well, you can start fiddling with them, and you can start doing what you want with them. And kind of learning from your own mistakes and whatnot.
So for example, here we make the head way too big, and we leave the rest of the proportions the same. It just looks weird.
It looks like my art.
Yeah, as I said, it looks weird.
And to add on to the topic of building your own style, that especially comes with just experimenting. When you're looking at new references, experimenting with new ideas. For example, if you're trying to do a style more closer to like Earth Song, you may have started out with doing show accurate ponies, but to get to Earth Songs, more than likely, I can't say it for sure because we have to ask her to get the clear answer. She probably looked at pictures of actual real horses and slowly studied those and tried to incorporate it into her existing work to slowly build out her own style. Mm-hmm. She didn't just go and try and make accurate horses. If you look at a piece by Earth Song, it's a very you read it as more closer to an MLP pony than an actual pony, but it is still very different from the show style, and that's most likely something that came from her looking at references and just experimenting over and over again while using those references to build from.
Yeah, references are very important. It's important to take references from a variety of sources. In the beginning, you want to stick to show so that you can learn how the show does things, and you can learn just a regular standard. And again, that's when drawing references, copying a reference, and then doing it again, maybe changing the angle or the pose a little bit, trying your own thing. But again, looking at the reference and seeing how it does the things that it does by drawing it. We like to think that we can understand something by looking at it, but you really have to draw it to understand it.
Yeah. So, if I'm drawing, how do I know when I'm messing up the proportions? How do I know when something looks off? Because it looks fine to me. I've been drawing it for the past 2 hours, The best way is to, like we've been saying, compare. A fresh set of eyes is a powerful tool. If you stop doing what you're doing, you stop drawing what you're drawing, and you compare to other people's proportions and volumes in the show and all that, you'll oftentimes come to find that you can improve things pretty dramatically just through simple reference comparison.
And to add on as well, one thing that View is doing here is when he looks at his reference, he's looking at the image, but then he's going back to his own piece and working on it. He's not trying. If he was trying to build a new style or expand his style based on other work, he doesn't work over the image. He keeps the image to his side, but he works on his own page. That's more of a proper way to use references. Never, and strongly never, put the image in front of you and try and copy the lines over it. That's tracing.
Yeah, don't trace.
Don't do that.
The only way tracing can be helpful is if you are really unsteady with the lines and you don't understand them, and then even then, it's simply a bad habit.
Yep. All right, so I think that a lot of people know about proportion anatomy stuff. Everybody knows you can look at a picture and draw it, right? So let's talk about what makes art hard. Let's talk about what
everything.
The real thing, in my opinion, makes art hard. I've already said it as volume. I really, really do think that this is what beginner artists struggle with the most. So I want to talk about it more.
Well, talk about how to make volume.
All right. So this is it's not an abstract concept. Everybody knows what the definition of volume is, right? It's space, right? But you're hit with an inherent problem when you're trying to draw, and it's that there is no space. You're drawing in 2D, so you have to kind of trick the brain into thinking that it's 3D. You have to do a few things to make you interpret it as something that pops. And there are plenty of ways to do that, but this is definitely the hardest thing to do because people don't naturally think this way. It's something that you have to practice. Now, I think there are a few tricks that we could talk about that will improve volumes. Mainly, it's just, for me, I think one of the big ones is going to be a thing called wireframing. This is an extremely time-consuming process, but it's very good for learning volumes. And it's when you, if you wouldn't mind, I'm sure you know what wireframing is. It's when you draw the shape of your horse, right? And then you start doing these little guidelines over it. You start doing these little things to try to illustrate the space a little bit better.
So if you've seen really old computer models, they were made up of these little grids.
Yeah.
And that's basically what you're doing when you're drawing a wireframe, is you're making the grid on top of it, and it helps you understand how the thing is 3D.
And then other tips are going to be things like just staying conscious about whether or not things are in each other's space. I see a lot of body parts and stuff clipping together in beginner art.
Yeah, you do want to worry about accidental overlap. A lot of artists will draw one leg, and that's a nice happy little leg. And then they draw the other leg doing the exact same thing. And they're kind of flattening each other out because there's no variety.
Yeah.
Another thing is, if you round the bottom of your hooves, then it feels like they're coming forward a little bit, like the pony is standing on a plane instead of just standing on a flat horizon. And that's an important thing to consider, the plane your pony is standing on.
I abuse that. My hooves are the most marshmallowy things. I round every part of them.
So if you draw that, it's sad.
Yeah.
And if you draw this, it's less sad. You have a pony in space.
So what are some ways that you can consciously think about volume while you're drawing a little bit better? What are you doing?
Put a smiley face.
Oh, good. It's a happy horse now. So
it's a tail.
you can work on your volume stuff from the very beginning of your drawing. Oftentimes when I start by drawing my undersketch. I'll start with a sphere, or a circle rather, for the head, and then I'll craft it into a sphere using guidelines, basically like a less intense wireframing, and so I build up my horses with spheres, not circles, which is it sounds really easy to understand, but it's you don't really get it until you try it, because it's not just an outline, you gotta give everything a little bit of space, a little bit of depth, and that takes a lot of practice.
It does.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's fair to open up for questions.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
So at the beginning, one of the kind staff members passed around cue cards. If you have written a question on it that you don't think we've answered, please bring it up right next to a Croconana.
Or even if we have answered and you'd like a review, or you
Yeah.
just want it answered more thoroughly.
This was a very, very quick and basic crash course, so we missed a lot of things, and I would be very happy to answer any concerns.
The nice thing about the question and answer section is it gives a bit of variety to the
Yeah.
panel. It allows us to see what we've missed, and that's nice.
I wish I had an eraser, man.
And if you want a cue card and a pen, we've just been given back a pile. If anyone would like one.
Yeah, raise your hand and keep it up if you would like one, and a staff member will be around.
I am going to shuffle these cards so that no one is worried that if they just put their card up here, the first card is not theirs.
And you'll notice that I'm often drawing something and then going back and drawing over it in a different place, because that's what correcting is.
It's the Croconana.
This one's actually a great question. All right, so the first one that I got is actually a fantastic question. It's, do you have any tips on deviating from copying references point by point to more dynamic poses? So basically, going from copying a reference to doing your own thing and using it as a guide. I think that's a great question. I think that's a really good step that a lot of people might be in.
All right.
And I think a lot of it might just be in getting adventurous. Just trying it and failing. You can check your reference and you can look at it and everything, and you can still get an idea of how big the chest should be, right?
Yeah, references are always a good guide for
Yeah.
proportions. The head will always be this size, the rump will always
Yeah.
be that size. It doesn't matter if you're looking at the
Yeah.
front or the back. So we'll use that to draw the front. We'll have a nice big head, and we'll look back, we'll see, okay, the chest is right about there, down there a little bit.
But my tip for deviating from copying references like that would definitely be to just do it. It's not going to be good your first few times. It never is. But that's just how it happens. You just got to try it. And to me, that's what's fun. That's a challenge, and I like that in art.
More dynamic poses are often thought by thinking up an action and an emotion.
So I've got a question here. When I try to draw steadily, my hand shakes. Any tips? First off, depends on what medium you're using. If you're using...
I would like to cover this one, actually.
Okay.
It's swoosh. That's the answer.
He has been taken.
Because my hand shakes. If I draw slowly, this is me drawing a straight line. It doesn't work. I cannot draw a straight line slowly. And that's with a stabilizer on this. If you draw faster, your lines get more straight. If you draw faster, your curves get more curvy. The unfortunate instance of this is, oh, well, how do I know to start and to end if I'm going to get it in the right place? Well, say you want to start here, point A. Come on, let's draw a line slowly. And you want to go to point B. But you don't want it to look like this. Well, the key is to set your pencil there, look, and then at point A, and then look at point B. And you'll usually go right through it. Unfortunately, my pen is not calibrated to the ratio here, so it's not going in the right spot, but we'll pretend it is. The curve is a lot smoother.
Yeah.
When you go faster, the curve is smoother. This is called swooshing.
There are other things that you can do that are not based on you. One of them is that a lot of different art programs, if you're using digital art, will have stabilizers. Photoshop does not, but Paintless AI and a few others will. And if you're struggling with drawing lines like that, then it might be helpful to bump up your stabilizer a little bit. And then one other tip before we move on to the next question that I wanted to say is drawing from your shoulder and not your wrist. Mm-hmm. That one's a pretty big one. Swooshing, as we've been calling it, it's not just going fast, it's using your whole arm as a motion. Because it kind of I think there's some psychology thing about it, but using minute motor function and stuff, you kind of it's like a different process for your brain, whereas just using your whole arm is a much more simple action, and it can just make it happen, and it's always smoother. So that's another tip that you can use. And can somebody please pass me some questions?
I have some more questions. And as I'm passing these questions down, to add on, just as Bob said, draw from your shoulder, not your wrist. And View held up his arm, and did some motions. Part of the reason why also not to use your wrist is because the maximum amount of movement for your wrist is this. That's not very far. This is how much your shoulder can get.
And it's really easy to get a cramp, and it's really easy to hurt yourself. And if you draw with a whole arm, whole shoulder, it takes time to adjust to, but you eventually get more control over your lines.
Here's a question that's actually in the same vein, and it was, how do you get the super crisp lines that I see in a lot of the art downstairs? So I think some of that might be in the cleanliness of your line work and stuff like that. So I
Well,
think
that's
we could
asking how to get the cleanliness.
Yeah. So a lot of that is basically just that artists spend a lot of time cleaning their work. I specifically, actually, I don't even do line work. I just do the sketch and then I clean my sketch. But I put a lot of effort into cleaning it, which gives them nice crisp lines or whatever.
And so if you have something rough, you can always, if you're drawing early and traditional, you can use a lighter pencil. You can use a lighter touch by holding the pencil from its back rather than its front, and that'll give you less control. But you can get a general idea, and it's very good to go in art from general towards specific, and you get that rough thing. But then, as you're working specific, you'll have something to work from, so that you can do the swoosh from point A to point B, and you have a point A to point B in mind because you've already got the sketch there underneath, and you don't have to worry about where you're going. Or if you've done it a million times, you can do it again.
All right, so here's a repeat offender. What program do we prefer drawing in, or what program do we recommend? That's a nuanced answer. There's a lot of different programs for a lot of different art processes. The one that I use personally is Paint Tool SAI, and I could not recommend it enough. This is the one that we're using right now. It's very fun. It feels very natural. But the industry standard one would be Photoshop. If you're an artist like us, which is probably going to be hobbyist to amateur, then I would very, very much recommend Paint Tool SAI. But if you want to actually become like a part of the industry, then you're going to want to learn Photoshop.
One of the key differences between SAI and Photoshop is price, too, because SAI is $60 one time.
Yeah.
Photoshop is $20 every month for the rest of your life, and that's too much money.
And there are other programs, especially if you want, there's Kitra, I believe I'm saying that one, Clip Studio Paint.
GIMP is out there. It's not good, but it's out there.
Yes. There are a lot of others out there. But to go back, our recommendation, as Bob said, is SAI.
Okay. That's our personal preference. You're allowed to do what you want.
So many of these questions are perfect for me.
But too late, it's my turn.
Yeah.
So this question is, how do you like to draw wings? So I'm going to choose to interpret that in the Valley Girl sense of, how do you like draw wings? And so we're going to go simple. So just things first, always do the bones. This is the attachment point, comes down a little bit, comes up. This is technically the wrist here at the top, and then you have the fingers that come out. But I want to get the general shape of the feathers, and I like to separate the feathers into two sections. You have the kind of flatter, rounder secondaries, and then the sharper pointing primaries. You come up and you have the webbing here, and the secondaries and primaries are quite long, but we also have the little feathers underneath. We separate those, and it's kind of the same curve there. And that's the general. You always want to start with the general, and then you go towards specific. So we'll separate the secondaries out, and they're just a bunch of lines. We're getting an overall curve with them, which is nice. And you always want to use a reference. And I've drawn so many wings that I could do this without a reference, but it takes drawing thousands and thousands and thousands of wings.
Dude, you're like a pig in the mud when it comes to wings, dude. You love those things.
I really enjoy wings.
You know how I draw wings? I drew 3 cylinders. Leave it at that.
And there's a bunch of little feathers towards the top. As you go from the bottom towards the top of the wing, the feathers get shorter and shorter and littler and littler. You start getting into down and fluffy things, which is what is in your pillow, is the down feathers.
So I've got a question here. Is it okay that I use a box mention for the body because it really works for me?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's great for volumes. Boxes are wonderful for volumes.
I would encourage that you experiment with it, though.
Yeah.
I think you should experiment all the time.
If something works for you today, it may not work as well tomorrow, or it may work better for you tomorrow, but you really want to try out this whole sphere thing. And so you learn a little bit. And one of the big things in art is when you try something new, your art will be worse, but you will learn. And from that, your art will be better.
So I'm checking out a lot of these questions, and a lot of them are volume related, which is why I was talking so much about volume. If we don't get to yours, please come see me. I love talking about volume.
We do have things to do after this, but yeah, come to us in the vendor hall.
Yeah,
seriously.
seriously.
We'll be there.
Like, there are some really, really great questions out here. Like facial expressions and how to make eyes look like they're on two sides of the head. I can answer that, man.
Well, why don't we do that?
All right, but I kind of want to draw it, but I know that thing's not calibrated.
I'm going to draw whatever you say.
All right, here. So let me hit that eyes like they're on two sides of the head. All right. So a lot of beginner artists, they'll draw the eyes the same width, the same height. And this is a very mathematical approach to it. But so if you're looking at my hand right now, right, and if I tilt it like this, so you're looking at it from a different angle, it gets smaller, right? Like this cross is so much thinner. That happens to eyes on the side of the head when it comes to ponies. So when you have an eye on the far side, it gets thinner. It kind of like sets into the head a little bit. So that's the thing that's going to happen is as you rotate things, what do they call it? Image angle?
They foreshorten.
Yeah, they foreshorten and they change. This is something that I would love to help with. If you would like a red line or something, that's one of the things that I love to draw. That's one of the things that I like focusing on. Anyways, so that's one of the volume-related ones. Other ones, including in the whole facial volume thing. Oh, and we should talk about facial expression in a second. But this one, it's in noses are really hard, particularly in more angles, and that's more volume. You know?
One of the big things about pony muzzles is people always draw them very large to start with, and they look weird when they're large. Pony muzzles are very, very small. And they're kind of cube-like. You kind of get this cube-ish.
Hey man, the smaller they are, the more boopable they are. I like that.
Everybody likes to.
So I've got another question here. When working on something for hours, have you flipped it upside down to see proportions from a new view? There's a second question.
I do
I've
this
got a second question.
I do this all the time.
I have my invert canvas macroed to my tablet, so.
This is also a great way for if you're looking at an image and something feels off and you can't figure out what it is, flip it to be up, just even invert it or flip it vertically or horizontally.
Oh no, it's too tall.
And then if that doesn't work, go look at a reference.
Well, always go look at the reference first.
Yeah, that's not how I do it. I'm too lazy for that.
He's a noob. We'll call him a noob.
And then there is a second question here, which is, can you show us how to build a foundation with spheres?
That's literally like word for word what I was talking about earlier.
So the difference between a circle and a sphere is this line. You put a line around it. It's the wireframe thing.
Yeah.
And we can use these lines as guidelines for the eyes. You can use them as guidelines for nose placement, for ear placement. They are great lines. Over time, you'll come to develop where your own lines go. And it's good to look at references and then draw the lines over your own sketch where you think the references lines would be. And then you compare and you contrast and you find it.
This is a question that goes back to proportions and just looking at references again. I love to draw. I mainly have trouble with nose and ears. I tend to make them large and it messes with the entire head. Is there a way I could avoid doing that?
When you make it too large?
Yeah.
Shrink it. Yeah.
You make it too large. You get very sad and you look at it and you're like, that's
This is honestly, I don't even think this is a problem. I think it's a great way to learn. I think one of the best ways to learn different art concepts is to push it way too far and then take it back to a more
if you
reasonable area.
think you always draw too large, go, okay, I'm going to draw 5% of the normal size and we'll see how large it is. And,
That's a great way to work with color.
Yeah.
Is pushing your values, your colors just crazy and then dialing
if
it back.
something for you is always one way, go the opposite way to a ludicrous extreme. And then it's a lot easier to dial back from that direction than to slowly approach the correct.
All right, so I have one that's literally just a big word, perspective.
That's a good
That one is very easy to explain in my opinion, but that's just because I'm a very mathematically minded person. Perspective is all math. It's all math. When you're setting it up, like you set up a horizon line, you set up your, what do they call them, orthogonals or whatever?
Your vanishing
Yeah, your vanishing point. It's all just math. It's just geometry. But it's
very difficult.
Yeah, if you want my tip for perspective, it would be to set up a grid along the ground that hits your vanishing points. I imagine the person that wrote this in has an idea of what perspective is and knows what a vanishing point is and all that. But for the sake of the people that might not, there are different kinds of perspective. View, would you mind illustrating them as a...
Perspective takes time to set up.
So the first kind of perspective would be one-point perspective.
That's what I was just doing, where you have the one point and everything vanishes towards that point.
Now this is the kind of thing that you might see typically in like when you're looking down a street.
And your sides
kind of coming into the vanishing point. That's
are
one point.
flat.
Yeah. Now let's hit it with the 2 point.
So for 2 point, you draw your horizon line. You have a point here, and you have a point here, and this is one edge, and then that goes all the way there. This is there. We have our nice little cube. Now, if you want to draw a pony in perspective, you draw the cube first.
And then you draw
the
the cube.
The pony in the cube.
Yeah.
So that the cube is a guideline for your proportions and your anatomy and everything.
All right, now let's get wild. Let's hit them with the 3rd point perspective.
All right, so you have your horizon line. Well, that's not very flat, is it?
You just shift your leg way down. It's like you never used paint till side. Just hold the shift key.
Well, we're waiting for the lines to be drawn. 3-point perspective. Sometimes you see great examples. Sometimes a great example you'll see, like if you ever open up a comic, if you ever see like a cityscape, like you're on top of a tower looking down, that can often be 3-point because you've got the tower going on, you've got 2 vanishing points to the side, but then the 3rd point way down low, and that gives this great sense of scale of something really far, like way down below you.
The 3rd point is difficult if only because it's no longer is it on the horizon line. Suddenly you got it way up somewhere, way down somewhere. And figuring out, by the way, where you should put your perspective points if you're trying to draw in perspective is very much an exercise of trial and error. You can have an idea of where you want of how you want things to
So
look.
these are your sides. Your 3rd point determines how your sides come. And they're no longer parallel, they start coming together towards the 3rd point. And so you get this kind of bowing in as you go out. So you're looking up and you're very scared.
So if you're looking to get better perspective, I would encourage you to try drawing these horizon lines and these different vanishing points and just experimenting with what happens when you separate them farther or you put them closer together. So I think that covers that one, right?
Let's get back to expressions.
Yeah, let's talk about expression. That one's one of my favorite things. So expression is tough, and the reason is because we as people read expressions very specifically. You can't just put a smile on them and have like the eyes just kind of do this. It doesn't work. Because when we're looking at expressions from person to person, we're not just looking at just the surface level stuff. Part of the thing that comes into play is the muscle underneath your face. When you're smiling, your cheeks physically move up. When you're frowning, like there are muscles underneath your face that are changing the shape of your face, and that's important stuff. You can't just take a basic thing and just like a basic eye and just like throw a little line over it and have that be the happy look,
Yeah, well, that's how you begin, and that's how you start.
But that's not how you get good.
Get good.
Yeah.
Basically, how you get good is you look at people and you look at other expressions and you try making the expression yourself. And you can look in the mirror when you do this. You can and you try to notice what happens to your body when you crinkle your eyes up, when you smile, when you furrow your brow down and your eyebrows come together, when you're
look at how your facial shape changes. Because a lot of people draw their pony as just like they start with a sphere for their head, right? And then as they're doing the expression, they don't really change anything about that sphere. But when you have different expressions, it completely changes it. So when it comes to this person writing in about expression, I would highly encourage that yourself in like a mirror, like what View is saying, and think more about what's underneath the different facial structures.
So you'll note here, the eye I initially drew goes above the brow line and below the cheek line. It's just placement. All your initial stuff is just placement, and then you figure out how the expression is going to change it based upon how you change your face, or how the reference is changing its face, or how you want the face to change, or how what looks right. And what looks right is very difficult to figure out.
I think that's pretty good. Do you have any questions about expression and everything? Please come talk to me. I love expression too. Anyways, here's another good one. This one's an interesting one. Any tips for making your sketches consistent as a constant recognizable character? I find that my drawings look a different way every time. I think this really comes down to experience.
Experience with references. A lot of people will try drawing without references over and over again. When you do that, you do get a lot of inconsistency, especially if you're not quite sure about how things attach or where they go. And it's fine to be inconsistent there because you're still figuring it out. But the more you use references, the more you'll learn where the things go.
After a lot of practice, you'll find yourself doing a lot of the same things. Frankly, I've done it to too much of a degree where I'm unwilling to change certain things about how I draw faces and stuff and different camera angles because I'm so used to drawing the way that I do. I have so much practice in it, and they look so consistent that there's no longer any inconsistency. So
it helps to increase variety. The more you work, the more you'll find a process that works for you. Great. But once you have that process, don't stop.
Yeah.
Still find new references, still find new things that interest you, still experiment, and you'll do better than somebody who draws the same pony in the same pose over and over and over. And it's just sad. Because you want to draw new ponies.
So another question we have is, going back to an earlier topic about the shoulder and wrist, is comparing drawing from shoulder to a wrist. What about the fingers, knuckles, and
it's all minute motor function. You know?
Yes,
none of it's going to be as smooth as using your shoulder.
Those are for very, 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 very specific circumstances, and it's like you still don't just draw with this part. This part is just you want to draw with all of it.
Whenever I'm doing line work,
Even when I'm doing this,
you're just scratching, sketching. You know, that's not you can do with that. It doesn't matter. When you're doing line work and stuff, definitely swoosh that with your whole arm. Even if you're working on like a smaller tablet or something, like you should try it because it will improve your line work. All right, so let's take another one. All right, so this one's a pretty common one. This one's the one that I struggle with from time to time, and that would be stallion pony measures. This one's all volume. Volume is always what it's about.
So at the front of the head, if we look at the next three-quarter view, the far eye is really foreshortened for a stallion.
They're always way on the far side.
And you get somewhat of a box in the front. And it can be a very large box, and I like to make it smaller, but we're going to make it nice and large here for the sake of example. So we think of it kind of like that. And we erase what's not needed from our gesture.
The worst part about drawing stallion heads is that there's so many different shapes that the show uses. Big Mac's head looks completely different from Shining Armor's.
Big Mac's head comes down.
I don't know if you guys ever noticed, but Shining Armor's eyes are like the weirdest thing.
He has terrible eyes. His eyes are
They're
inconsistent.
really small. And then when it comes to drawing a specific male character like that, you know, like with most things in art, it comes back to references. Check out that show style picture of Shining Armor and try to figure out what's different between that and Big Mac. You know, make the changes that you need to change.
Yeah, and male stallions, well, any other kind. The eyes are a bit, the muzzle's, as I said, box here, so it's going to be longer and bigger, and it's going to overlap that far eye, so you won't have very much of it there.
So, here's one that I missed when we were talking about perspective, but how do you determine the different perspectives of the pony's mouth to the head, depending on the angle, and same question for the body? So I think what they're really asking is about camera angle.
That's a lot of volume.
Yeah, it's all volume. Everything's volume.
And what we're talking about when we say volume is 3 dimensions. It's thinking about things 3-dimensionally and trying to see them as if they could rotate.
Because those
in
things
3D
change
space.
when you change the camera angle. You know, if you're looking up from the jaw, it's going to be a completely different. You know, it's going to be a completely different head shape. So a lot of it is just thinking spatially and trying to figure out how things work together, and that is hard. It's
That is
really
very,
hard.
very hard. So
That's,
there's a lot
that
of
is
guessing
the
time.
thing that makes people frustrated in art, is that they can't think perfectly spatially. And you know, nobody really does, but it's a skill that you can practice and learn. But that's what makes learning art so time-consuming and so hard, is because thinking spatially is not something that just comes overnight. If you're trying to draw at differing camera angles, I would encourage you just to try it and fail. Use your references. You know, use the same problem solving that most other artists use. And just try to think more about the space that you're drawing.
Yeah, the perspective grid is always useful. The plane the pony is standing on, so you get a
that'll help
rough
too.
idea. And as they were saying earlier, you can draw with a cube, so you get a good idea of how much of the front of the pony we're going to see, or how much of the side. If we say that's the front, that's the side, that's the top, you get a better idea. Okay, so maybe the ears over here, the top is all going to be hair, so we'll put the hair down here. The front is going to have the eyes, and oh no, the ears way back here. Well, maybe that's okay. And so you get a weird little pony in a box. But it's okay, because this is a start. So maybe we'll say the ears a little more on the top than we thought.
Yep.
And we correct, and the eyes a little more on the side than we thought, and the muzzle's a little further down. And over time you correct, and things start to look a little better. The hair comes up a little more.
If whoever wrote this in, if you would like an exercise to practice this kind of thing, to get better at this kind of thing, I would encourage you to try drawing heads specifically at every different camera angle that you can. So 3/4, and then tilt that 3/4 up, and then
Looking from above.
just try to draw every camera angle for a head that you can think of. And some of them are not going to look pretty, but
And it's never going to look pretty or right the first time you do it.
Yeah.
References are very useful here.
it's true.
But it's also useful for you to try to figure it out on your own.
Now, we've drawn our View's drawn a lot of 3/4 perspective heads, but one card that we got in was asking if we could do an example of just a shot from a forward onto the face.
Forward on. So forward on, big eyes, same size, kind of straight towards the center. Muzzle is a little higher than the bottom of the eyes, just a touch. And the mouth comes out to the eyes a little bit. The hair starts a little above the eyes, and the ears a little off. There's only one ear generally shown from the front, unless you're Pinky or Rarity.
All right, so are we ready for the next one? Because this is a very Bob Dude question, I
And
think.
it's a little taller than it is round from
Never
the
mind.
front. Now we can go.
All right. So here's one that says, how do you draw ponies hugging? And as if I haven't stressed it enough yet at this panel, it's all volume.
Well, that's a relative and touching.
Well,
one.
remember when I was talking about how when it comes to volume, you also have to watch for things clipping. This is where that comes in. Is characters interacting and stuff. You have to make their volumes interact. If you want to put a hoof around one other horse's body, you have to give that hoof some weight. You got to give it some space. It's got to make it all the way around the back of the horse's body. That's the hardest part.
Mm-hmm. And for stuff like this, there's a lot of overlap. So
Yeah.
you'll have one head, and then you'll have the other head, and they're completely on top of each other. And so it becomes difficult to tell where one ends and one begins when you're initially drawing. But as you get into it, you'll figure it out.
See, that'd be nice, but then you don't know what the other character is doing to the other character.
Yeah, if you draw just one at a time, you'll have no idea what's
Yeah.
going on with the other one. If you've got the proportions right for how long the arm is, if you've got the anatomy right, if you've got the expression going in the right angle, you really need to know what everybody's doing. In order
And
to
here's
make
a
sense.
practical example for the hugging bit. If I wanted to have one character hugging another, and it happened to be one arm was getting around the mane or something, if I had just drawn the other character without knowing that that hoof was going to be there, that that arm was going to be there, the hair would just be flat, like the other characters that's getting hugged, that her hair would just be flat. But in actuality, if you were to wrap a horse hoof around one of them, you know, that hair would change. It would be a part of, like, it would have to interact with that other volume. And if you were to draw one at a time, then you would just miss that. And your other character would just feel flat, or like they're not a part of the image.
Now, I did see a hand go up. Is it related to... do you want to put it on the card and we'll get it in? Just because we want to give priority to people who wrote stuff on cards.
Yeah, dude.
We do have some cards here.
Yeah, speaking of which, more volume 1s, how to draw back legs.
Yeah, let's go over back legs.
All right.
So we have the rear, and one of the important things that people miss on back legs is that the back legs kick back a little bit, so your overall angle will go backwards when the pony is at rest. One of the other things anatomically is the placement of the knee. Pony knees are very, very, very high up. You have the body here, and it just about intersects with where the body is. It attaches up here towards the top of the pelvis, and you get the knee, you get the hock coming back here, and then you have a really long ankle to get into the foot, because it's a horse and because they exaggerate in the show. And this area here is the thinnest area between the rump here and the front just below the knee.
That's one of my favorite parts about drawing ponies, actually, is that you can exaggerate and get away with it. Because it's a cartoon character, it doesn't really, you know, you can stretch and squash and it's all right.
Yeah, we can put things way back here and it's fine. Or we can put things in front a little bit and it's still fine because we have the knee and things are bending. But we still have that thinness and then it gets thicker towards the bottom.
So this is partially related back to the hugging, and this is a clarification. What do you mean when you say clipping?
Clipping.
Oh, so like when one volume is kind of getting into the other volume's volumes. So, can you illustrate this a little bit better?
I'm drawing a Venn diagram, and the clipping is where things overlap. And if something overlaps awkwardly, you can't really tell what's going on. Like the other eye here is completely clipped. So whose eye is that? What's sharing? What's going on? It's confusing. You don't want things to be confusing. So you want things to be, if they're together, they're together. If they're separate, they're separate. So when one is over another, you make it over the other. And it's okay to draw what's underneath initially with the gesture, but you have to make sure that when you get towards the specific, you know which one's on top.
All right. So here's this is part of another one that I tried to answer earlier, but didn't really get around to super well. But we should actually probably talk about how noses in different angles are, because we kind of skipped over that one. But another part of it was that tail posture is also awkward, since normal horses hold them, like, their tails so close to their bodies, whereas ponies just pop way up. And I don't know really how to make that less awkward. I guess he just, like,
Well,
I don't know, that's just kind of part of pony, you know? Like,
one of the things, the differences between an MLP pony and a regular horse is that the tail will come up off the body first.
Mm-hmm.
In a regular horse, you get that just straight down. And that can be done sometimes. I mean, if you're drawing, let's say, Pinkamena as opposed to Pinky, she may have that kind of sadness kind of thing going on with the hair, which makes it very, very straight. And so something that goes straight down will be less expressive, especially if you're drawing a pony like Maud. It will be less expressive and therefore more like her.
I'll take a little sidetrack real fast just because I want to talk about it, but empathy in drawing. I've never been more bored than when I drew Maud Pie. Because you can't help but empathize with the you know, the expression and the characters that you're drawing. And I just I couldn't handle it. That's why I draw so many happy horses. I just
Yeah. So when you're drawing, it's important to, well, it's not, how do we phrase this?
For what?
For empathy, for saying how empathy
It's not important. It's just more fun. You
No,
know, I think it's important, if only because you'll stick to art a little bit better because you're gonna have more fun.
Empathy influences your work. If you're
Yeah.
happy when you're drawing and you're drawing something happy, it's going to look more genuine.
Yeah.
And that's just how it goes. And if you think about, okay, this pony is sad, I'm going to turn on some sad tunes and we'll see where this goes. It's a good idea.
Yeah. Hey, this is the entire basis of venting art. You know, people that draw really angry.
It's a German expression.
Yeah. It's just to get your emotions out. You know, that's really nice. So if you don't know what it's like to draw that, oh boy, you're in for a treat. It's amazing.
So, well, are we still answering the teller?
This is a lot of them came down to like volume things.
I've got one that's a bit away from volume. Those little like circles in the eyes, how do I get them right without making them look weird?
Oh, that's totally volume.
No.
That is volume. That's volume.
Those little, as Bernard said, those little white circles is light hitting the eye and reflecting off of it. So sometimes what may make them look weird is one eye will have a set of circles acting a certain way, and the other eye, the white circles will be acting maybe a mirror, like a mirrored image of them, which doesn't really look right because you most likely have one primary light source. So when it hits one eye, or when it hits both eyes, they should be responding in the same way, but they'll be seen differently.
If you're struggling with it, I think my active tip for while you're drawing would be to think about A, light source, and B, like I always say, volume. Because eyeballs are eyeballs.
I have some more basic tips for that than that.
Yeah.
Cross the pupil. When you draw it, cross between the pupil and the iris, it makes things look a lot more natural than just exclusively in the pupil. You don't have to do it with all of them, at least one of them, and then onward. We are very, very close to being out of time.
If we did not get around to answering one of your questions, or if this only inspired more for you, please come find if you're a super eye, and the vendor hall would be so happy to talk to you. We love talking about art. I don't know where Wandering Dragon's going to be.
I am going to be somewhere around the hall, but I'll most likely be able to water.
You can always find me, and no matter how busy I look, trust me, I want to talk to you about volume. I love volume.
Yes.
It's so fun.
If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to see us tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you all, and good night.
Sorry, we can read all your questions.